Howdy folks, welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles. Two games for you today. No particular theme to today's video, just a couple of matches where it's actually me playing for a change. Even though I'm not able to play World of Tanks or War Thunder, or pretty much anything requiring a stable internet connection at the moment, until my ISP's done with the upgrades in my area. I still have plenty of games, saved replays. This is one of them. I'm platooned with Quickie Baby in this match, but may as well not be. We're both in Tier 9 tank destroyers, but I'm in the T-30, he's in the Tortoise, and for what I'm planning to do here on Abbey, with no artillery, is going to require speed, and the Tortoise just can't catch up, so we're both going our separate ways. This road on Abbey, if there's any artillery in the game, is pretty much just where all the heavy tanks go to die. But there is no artillery in this match, and so I'm going to take full advantage of that, and get up here as fast as I possibly can, with some support. There's an Object 704 coming up here with us, and a T-32 up front. It's pretty much just going to be me and the Object 704. Everybody else is going to head off in different directions, mostly over this ridge to the left, but we're both Tier 9 tank destroyers, and we both have really, really big guns. And we've managed to get well beyond the halfway mark before we run into the first enemy tank. The enemy were very, very defensive on this side and allowed us to get this far up before we actually found anything to shoot at. And there's our first target, an M103. There's a Tiger 2 around there with him, but it's just a Tiger 2. And the M103... The M103's only chance of winning this is if he can keep firing his gun. And if he allows us to just pop round, take a shot, back off, reload, and then pop out again when we're ready, he's in serious trouble. And that's exactly what he does. And it's pretty much just me and the Object 7... Well, I say just me and the Object 704 on this corner. We are two Tier 9 tank destroyers, but they're allowing us to dictate the terms of the engagement. There is a T-34 with us, but it may as well not be. He's not doing anything. He's hiding behind us, and he doesn't even poke his nose around the corner until these two guys are both dead. You've got to have a certain element of sympathy for the guy in the Tiger 2 and the guy in the M103, though. I mean, they clearly knew that they couldn't push down this road because there's only two of them here, and they're probably cursing their team and thinking, well, you know, if we just hold up here and hope we don't see any of the Tier 9s, and then a T-30 and an Object 704 roll around the corner. And... yeah, they didn't last long, and they were doomed. I mean, make no mistake about it, they were never going to hold that corner against us, but they allowed us to take the corner from them for such a cheap cost in health. I mean, both of us only took one hit each, and they're both dead. It's because they allowed us to only come out and shoot and be shot at when we were ready for it. Where they should have been camping that corner was here, where these base campers could have at least provided some support fire for them. But then again, I'm not too sure about that, because watch this. We've just killed the M103 and the Tiger 2, and these guys have still got their guns pointing the wrong way. Nailed the T-28, and he's still got his gun pointing the wrong way. Look at this. Base camping at its finest. Total tunnel vision. Completely oblivious to everything that's going on, except for what's right in front of them. That's why you find them camping the base. Now, unfortunately, an AMX, and he does back off, but I don't know if he's backed off because he's reloading, which is what I hope, or because he's just seen an angry T-30 pointing its gun towards him, because I have an awful lot of open ground to cover here before I can get myself in a position where I'm safe from being shot at by him, and I'm not interested in capping. You know, I want to get some damage done, earn some actual XP and credits. Another guy pops up, but he cannot see me. There's far too much concealment between me and him. Quickie Baby lands a smacking shot on him with the Tortoise, and he gets finished off and made it. I'm now in low enough ground that the AMX can't point his gun at me, and this T-30, why you do this? I shouldn't really complain. I've had games in the T-30 where the gun misbehaves far, far worse than this, and that's really the first shot it's put wrong the entire game. But that one definitely dropped low and to the right and missed completely. But yeah, this was one of those games that just did not last long at all. The enemy team just disintegrated, and it was a real scramble to try and actually get some damage done. And he is going to have reloaded by the time I get up and round here. And What you do not want to do with the T-30's gun is rush your shot, because it will miss. It will miss even when it's fully aimed. So even if it means taking a hit, which you can afford to take, let it aim, because you really don't want to die and be one of the only 2 tanks on the entire team that actually died to enemy fire during the course of that game. You don't often see games like that in World of Tanks. The enemy team only actually managed to kill 1 tank. We did lose 2 tanks, but one of those was a Panzerjäger 2 in a failed platoon that got team killed by somebody right at the start of the match. I wasn't really paying attention. Moving on from the T-30 to one of my other favourite tank destroyers in World of Tanks, the AT-15, the British Tier 8 tank destroyer. And it's strange that I should like this thing so much, because it is the polar opposite of my other favourite Tier 8 tank destroyer, the ISU-152, the mighty Troll Cannon. The 2 machines couldn't be more different. The ISU is fast, it's stealthy, it's lightly armoured, and it has a monster gun, a 152mm cannon with ridiculous penetration and 750 alpha damage at Tier 8. Whereas the AT-15 just, well, doesn't. I actually struggled to come up with... I don't think there's another Tier 8 tank destroyer that's anything like the AT-15. Certainly not in terms of speed and armour. And gun-wise, I suppose the nearest comparison would be the 100mm gun on the AMX-48. But even then, you know, there are vast differences. The AT-15, this Type B barrel 20-pounder gun, the rate of fire is comparable to the 100mm gun on the AMX-48, but it aims so much faster. And it's not just the gun, because a lot of French tank destroyer drivers will constantly be complaining, and rightfully so, about the crappy gun firing arc on their machines. The AT-15, that gun, look at this. The angle that you can actually cover at the front of the machine with that gun without having to turn the tank is something like 90 degrees. And that's the biggest problem with the French tank destroyers around this tier. They have very, very narrow firing arcs, and they take a long time to aim. And so, when you're engaging tanks at medium to short range, if they're moving laterally to you, then you're constantly having to move the machine, and then go through that whole aiming cycle again in order to bring the gun to bear on them. You don't get that problem with the AT-15. It can be a very tricky machine to do well in, though. It's definitely not a newbie-friendly Tier 8 tank destroyer. And that's due to a combination of factors: the gun, the armour, and the speed. The gun, because people will look at the accuracy of the gun and the aiming time, which are both very, very good, and the speed, and think, well, this is a traditional sit-at-the-rear sniping kind of tank destroyer. And it isn't. You hang around at the back in an AT-15, and what's likely to happen is the battle's going to get away from you, and your team are going to kill everything, or the battle's going to get away from you, and your team are all going to die, and then suddenly you've got far too much to shoot at, and purely because it's so slow, you couldn't keep up with the pace of the battle. On the other hand, people look at the frontal armour of the AT-15, 228mm at the front. Pretty damn impressive at the side and rear as well, and think this is a brawling close-range tank destroyer. Well, no, it doesn't do that either. It can, as you're going to see here, depending on the kind of enemy you're going up against. The frontal armour is very good, but you have weak spots. Now, when you're going up against your typical mid-tier Russian heavies, like this, with 175mm of penetration, they have to hit your weak spots. But if they're constantly moving, and you can make this thing work as a close-range brawling tank destroyer, just like this, against the right kind of opponents. Against the wrong opponent, and the AT-15 comes up against plenty of tanks that could be considered the wrong opponent, tanks that have the penetration to beat your 228mm of frontal armour, tanks that have the accuracy to hit your weak spots at close range when it's easier for them to hit your weak spots, and you'll soon find out why this machine, while it can brawl at close range against the right kind of opponent, is definitely not what this thing is really suited for. Where you ideally want to be fighting the AT-15 is at medium ranges like this. That IS-3, for example, with his BL-9 gun, does not have the penetration to reliably penetrate your frontal armour, and he definitely doesn't have the accuracy to reliably hit your weak spots. Your 20-pounder gun, on the other hand, is easily capable of making short work of him, as long as you get the opportunity, like that, to keep pouring fire into him. and I did take a hit from the rear there. Tiger 2 on the hill behind me. His first shot went in at my tracks and didn't do any real damage. But let's not give him the opportunity to take a slightly better aimed shot, get this rock between me and him. And now that there's no longer anything in front of me to be shooting at, and the Tiger 2 behind me has disappeared, this is where, well, the trick to successfully driving the AT15 is map awareness. And, you know, that's the trick of driving every tank successfully, but it's particularly true of slow machines like the AT15, like the T28 prototype and the T28. And when I say map awareness, I mean you do need a much, much greater degree of map awareness in slow machines like this than you do in machines that can react to what is happening on the battlefield. In a slow machine like this, you need to be reacting to what is going to happen on the battlefield. In a fast medium, for example, you can see a flank collapsing if you're paying attention to the map and be able to move fast enough to react to it. In a machine like this, you can't. So you need to predict the flank collapsing before it happens and put yourself into the position where you can do something about it when it does happen. And, well, as you saw in the previous replay, World of Tanks is full of players who don't even know what's happening 50 meters to their left when it's happening, let alone being able to predict what's about to happen just from doing something as simple as looking at their minimap. And here's our little friend in the Tiger 2 who is now panicking and is firing high explosive at the front of a machine with 228mm of armour. And he's doing damage. He's doing like 16 damage. And now he's dead. Yeah, I like the AT15. It's a machine that, if you don't really know what you're doing in it, you know, if you don't have that kind of map awareness that allows you to predict where you're going to need to get this thing before it happens, then you can still do well in it against bad players like that Tiger 2. But generally speaking, you really do need to know what you're doing when you're driving slow machines like this, like the T28 prototype, like the T28, like the T95, and yeah, like the Tiger 2, in order to get the most out of them. There's definitely a higher degree of map awareness required to be able to make sure that this thing is in the right place at the right time and able to bring the firepower to bear when it's needed. Because if you just hang around and wait to react to events after they've already unfolded in machines as slow as this, you're going to be too late. And a shout out in this video to Banana Pylord, who was driving the enemy Lux. He was very excited to see me in this game. I didn't really have time to stop and respond to him because, you know, I was killing tanks. But it's a shame he had to die. I do hate it when the Lux gets killed because it's just too cute to die. And sorry I didn't have time to stop and respond to you in person. Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.